Hey guys, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Becca and today I have Becca'S Bookopoly round 29. So if any of you guys are unfamiliar with Bookopoly at all, this is the TBR game that I play every single month that is based on Monopoly. Every square has a prompt, I roll the dice, and whatever prompt I land on, I have to pick a book to fill. If this is the first time that you're seeing Bookopoly, I will link January's version up here for you guys, which has a full tour of the 2021 board as well as a recap of the rules. And in my description box, I will put the full Bookopoly playlist, including all 29 episodes if you just want to binge the whole thing. But for you guys who know what's going on here, let's see how I did in April. So my April TBR was a little bit on the hefty side. We had Red, White and Royal Blue, which was a punishment for not finishing March's Bookopoly. We had Deviate by J. Kristoff, which was a sci-fi. You Love Me by Caroline Kepnes, which was other. We had The Crown of Gilded Bones by Jennifer L. Armentrout, which was a fantasy romance. Isola Volume 2 by Carl Kerschel was a graphic novel. Dream Country by Ashay Brown was for a video project, and Malice by Heather Walter was a fantasy pick. And I am happy to say that I have completed April's Bookopoly. Now I haven't finished everything. Crown of Gilded Bones, the paperback only became available in the UK a few days ago, but I have started it and I'm pretty confident I will be at least almost done, if not done, by the end of the month. And Deviate by J. Kristoff, I'm 100 pages into it and I don't want to say for certain right now, but that one may be a DNF for me because I'm just not really feeling it. But the important thing is there will be no punishment for May. So what plans do I have for the month of May? The week after this video is posted, I'm going to be taking a week off. You guys probably won't notice because all of my videos will have been scheduled in advance, but I won't be working on videos. I won't be working on candles. The only thing I'm going to be doing is vlogging for the week, as I usually do, and I may not read all that much. So I am going to say here that I may allow myself a pass on this month's Bookopoly, because what is the point in taking a break if I then have to come back and be really stressed about what I'm reading? That being said, I am going to the best of my ability, try and complete all of the books that I have on May's Bookopoly TBR, and I may not even take the pass, you know. If it turns out that I do read a lot on the week that I'm off, and the reason why I don't complete my TBR is just sheer laziness, then I will still take the punishment for that. But I just thought that I would let you guys know that possibly next month I may give myself a break. As well as that, I do have 2 read-alongs that have live shows in May that I co-host. The first one is the Witchlandsalong, hosted by Jade at Jade Reads, and for that I will need to read the second book in the series, which is Windwitch, ahead of our live show on the 9th of May. And the second read-along is Elderlingalong, and for that one I will have to read Fool's Errand by Robin Hobb, and the live show for this is going to be on the 23rd of May. And then in terms of readathons, there is only one readathon I'm going to be participating in this month, and that is the Do the Thingathon, which is hosted the Do the Thingathon that is hosted by Ashley from A Frolic Through Fiction. This is a readathon that centers around making progress towards your yearly goals. There aren't really any prompts, it's just whatever reading goals you set for yourself at the beginning of the year, you will have to make progress towards during the readathon. This one is only a week long and it is happening in the final week of May. I don't even know what kind of goal I'm going with yet for the readathon. I'm gonna see what Bookopoly brings me and see if I can make like a goal-oriented TBR from what I have to read this month anyway. And now we've got that out of the way, let us get into our first roll. Okay, so last month we finished on fantasy. Apologies for the cat hair on the board. Hamilton was rolling all over it. First roll. 10. A romance. So roll number 1 was a romance, and this is the one that I asked my patrons to pick for me for the month. I don't own a whole ton of books that are exclusively romance, so I picked 4 that I'm interested in. I do own one of them, however, and that one is Layla by Colleen Hoover. This one is a new adult romance that has a bit of a thriller twist in it, I think. The other options were Credence by Penelope Douglas, which is another, I think, quite sinister new adult romance. We then had Learn My Lesson by Katie Robert, which is the second book in the Wicked Villain series, and I think this one is a throuple between Hercules, Hades and Megara. And the final option they had was Get a Life, Chloe Brown, which I believe is like a standard adult romance. So as the votes started to come in, it became very apparent that Penelope Douglas and Colleen Hoover were not even contenders, and Learn My Lesson by Katie Robert and Get a Life, Chloe Brown were duking it out. However, with just about 50% of the votes, I think there's 51 votes in total, our winner is Get a Life, Chloe Brown. Now, this is the kind of romance that I'm usually not typically interested in. However, Steph from Shelflove really loves the Brown Sisters series, so I do want to give it a try, especially as I read Red, White and Royal Blue in April and didn't hate it. So maybe these brightly illustrated romances are not a write-off for me after all. So this is the first book in the Brown Sisters series, and I believe it follows a chronically ill main character who makes a list of things that she would like to do to help her get a life. And to help her accomplish this, she enlists the help of a tattooed handyman, and I'm guessing it's a romance between those two. I've heard that Talia Hibbert's books are really funny. Depending on the type of humor, that could be hit or miss with me, but I'm definitely excited to be giving this one a try. Roll number 2 is a double, and that is a 12. And that is a pet pick. Okay, so here are our 3 pet pick books. This time I've gone for all of the books that I need to read for read-alongs, and Hamilton's here right now, but we're just going to ignore him for a moment. So we have Fool's Errand, which is move please. So we have Fool's Errand by Robin Hobb, which is the first book in the Tawny Man series, and this one is the book that I have to read for Elderlingalong. I'm just going to put that on him. Yep, you eat that book, you eat it. We then have Windwitch by Susan Dennard that I need to read because I am a co-host for the Witchlandsalong. And then the one that I actually don't want him to pick is Hero of Ages by Brandon Sanderson. This is the final book in the Mistborn series, and I will be reading this because I'm a co-host of the Stormlight read-along, where we have backtracked and we're finishing off Mistborn. But I've only just finished The Well of Ascension, and I think I'm the first one of the hosts to actually finish it. So at this point, the live show for The Well of Ascension hasn't even happened yet, so I doubt I'm going to be in a position to want to pick up Hero of Ages quite yet. But I did need a third book to put with these two, and I wanted to go with the theme of read-along books, so we'll see what he picks. He's currently just lying on everything, but I'm going to go and get his dreamies, I guess, and we'll see what he does. Okay, so the little snacky snacks have been placed. Ham! Please find them. Don't do it. Don't. Oh my god. Windwitch by Susan Dennard is our winner. I really thought he was going to go for Hero of Ages then. The lovely, the wonderful Hamilton decided to pick Windwitch by Susan Dennard. I was really worried for a second that he was going to go for Hero of Ages, but I'm glad that my boy came through for me. So this is the sequel to Truthwitch, and it is the book for April for the Witchlandsalong, and in this series we are following Safi and Iseult. Safi is a Truthwitch, which means that she can tell when people are lying and when they are telling the truth, which makes her extremely covetable, as this is quite a powerful ability. But all Safi wants is to run away with Iseult, who is her best friend, and start a life outside of the city and outside of all of this drama. When they are trying to get some money together to buy a place of their own, they stumble across a blood witch, and a blood witch is somebody who has the ability to scent your blood and then track you across vast distances. So from that moment on, Safi and Iseult are on the run. This ends up with them embroiled in this big political plot that centers around a 20-year treaty that is soon going to be drawing to a close and will possibly throw the world into chaos. So I did really enjoy Truthwitch. I really like the characters, I really like the world. I did find it a little bit confusing and a little bit too fast-paced, but every book in this series is named after one of the core characters, and book 2 is Windwitch, and the Windwitch in the series is my favorite character from book 1. So I'm really excited about this, and I'm hoping that now that I've read book 1 and I have a little bit of a better grasp on the world and everything, I will enjoy this one a little bit more. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, the live show of this is going to be on the 9th of May. Roll number 3 is 5. and that is a book for my unhaul project. Roll number 3 is a book towards my unhaul project. If you are unfamiliar with my unhaul project, I'm trying to do a series of vlogs throughout 2021 where I read from a selection of books that I own that I do really want to read, but I don't think I will want to keep once I've read them, to clear some shelf space. I have just posted a TBR cart tour as well that contains all of the books that will be part of this series, and it was a struggle for me to pick one for this prompt, but I decided on We All Looked Up by Tommy Wallach because this is one that has intrigued me for a very long time. I generally refer to it as like an end of the world breakfast club kind of situation, because in this story Emposia is about to strike Earth. I think humanity has been given like a 2-month warning period, and it is about this group of teenagers who come from like different like high school groups. So we have like an athlete, an overachiever, an outcast, etc., and they essentially come together with like 2 months left to live. So I am intrigued about this because I do like contemporaries that have a slight sci-fi twist to make things a little bit more interesting, but I don't think I want to keep this when I've read it because contemporary just like really isn't my thing. Roll number 4 is another double, and that is a 2, so that one is a fantasy romance. Roll number 4 gave us our second double, which wasn't ideal, but we landed on fantasy romance, which is one of my favorite spaces on the board. And for this one I'm going to be reading Dark Harmony by Laura Thalassa. This is the final book in the Bargainer series, which is a series that I really love, and in this one we are following a siren called Callie who has a string of black beads that wind all the way up her arm, and every bead represents a debt that she owes to the bargainer. Now the bargainer is this big bad fairy guy, and he makes bargains with people, but it is extremely rare to have more than one bargain outstanding with him, and he always comes to collect. However, Callie hasn't seen him in the last 7 years and doesn't know where he's gone or when he's going to come and collect, and then one day he reappears in her life and demands that she starts to repay the bargains that she owes him. So there is like an extra plot line in here as well that's more fantastical, where we have these fairy warrior women that are going missing and they're reappearing unconscious in glass coffins with these like really creepy babies. So I'm excited to see what the conclusion of this series has in store for me. I'm always excited for a little bit more Desmond Flynn in my life because he is one of the sexiest love interests that I've ever read about, and I will be glad that I finally finished this series because I do definitely, one thing I really need to be doing is finishing more series. Roll number 5 is a 4. And that one is a manga. Roll number 5 was a manga, which is good. We need to get some smaller books into this TBR. And for this one, I've selected Children of the Whales Volume 7 by Abi Umeda. This is a, I want to say like upper young adult, like new adult manga series because it is kind of cute and it's like a fantasy story with really nice artwork, but there is a lot of like brutality and things like massacres in here that I did not expect with this like really pretty art style when I was going into it. But in here we are following Chikuro, who is the archivist on the Mud Whale, and the Mud Whale is this big floating island. None of the residents of the Mud Whale know anything about society outside of this floating island. They've never seen another human outside of their own community, and one day when they are passing another island in the Sea of Sand, they go to scout it out for supplies, which they do regularly, and they find a young girl there who starts to educate them about the outside world and why the residents of the Mud Whale are actually trapped there. So I've read 6 installments of this series so far. I will say that throughout the 6 volumes I've read, there has been quite a few lulls in the story, and I think volume 6 was one of those lull periods. But I just adore the art style in here. It has characters that I really enjoy as well, and I did actually think that there was only like 10-11 volumes in this series, but I think it goes up to at least volume 14. So I'm not even halfway through and I need to get a move on. Roll number 6 is 8, and that is a fantasy. Rule number 6 was a fantasy, and of course for this one I'm going to be reading Fool's Errand by Robin Hobb. This is the first book in the Tawny Man trilogy, however it is the 7th book in the Realm of the Elderlings as a whole, so I can't really tell you too much about it, but this continues the story of Fitz. Fitz is the character that we are introduced to in the very first book in the Elderling series, where he is abandoned on the doorstep of the keep by his maternal grandfather, who wants to return him to his father, Luga, who is the prince in waiting, Prince Chivalry. So Prince Chivalry finds out that his bastard is coming to stay and quickly abdicates the throne, which leaves Fitz in an awkward position where nobody really wants to claim him. So he's raised by the stable master of the keep, Burrick, up until he comes of an age where like he's a little bit more capable, he's a little bit older, and then the king approaches him and asks him to be the royal assassin. So the first trilogy follows Fitz from the age of like 6 up until around 18, and we are picking up his story a little bit further in the future. I don't know how old he is at the start of this. I'm gonna take a guess at like maybe mid-20s, but I'm really excited to revisit this part of the world because the live ship traders is set somewhere different with different characters, and also to see how the revelations from the live ship traders, because like that blew my mind with some of the fantastical elements and what we learned about the world as a whole in that series, how that applies to Fitz's journey and the Tawny Man trilogy. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, the live show for this is going to be on my channel on the 23rd of May. It is a little bit delayed, one because I'm taking that week off, and then a couple of other members of our group have things going on and deadlines and stuff, so this one is going to be a little bit delayed, but by the time we get to the second book in the series, we hope to be pulling it back on schedule. And what will hopefully be our final roll number 7, is not our final roll because it is another double. That one is 4. And that one is a contemporary. For roll number 7, we attempted to end this thing, but instead we rolled another double, and this time we landed on contemporary. And I did struggle a little bit with this one. You guys know I'm not a big contemporary reader, and I already have a couple of contemporary style books on this TBR. So I decided to go for one that has contemporary elements but isn't exclusively in the contemporary genre. And that one is The Wicker King by Kay Ancrum. I have been desperate to read this for the longest time. I keep trying to squeeze it into readathon TBRs and never quite managing to read it, but this one is a book that I believe has contemporary thriller and slight fantastical elements, as we are following 2 boys who've been friends from a very young age, and as they have gone into their teenage years, they've ended up on separate paths a little bit. One of them is like really popular, the other one's a little bit more of an outcast, and when one of them starts to have hallucinations about this fantasy kingdom, the other one kind of goes along with it to try and help his friend out. So I've heard absolutely amazing things about this, and I've wanted to read a book from Kay Ancrum for the longest time, so I thought this was the best starting point. It is also told in a little bit of mixed media, and if you can see, the pages degrade as we go through the book, which I think is a representation of the descent from like the normal life portion of this story into like the fantasy hallucinations. And once again, let's try for another final roll. Roll number 8 is a 4. And that is a community shelf. Let me just give these an extra shuffle. And this month I'm going to be reading a TBR Veteran. And finally, our final roll for me was a community shelf card. This one was a TBR Veteran, which is essentially a book that's been on my shelves for a really long time, and a lot of the books that I've had the longest are actually on my unhaul cart, ready for that unhaul project. So I'm pretty confident I can now let you guys know that you are going to have the second installment of my unhaul project coming to you at some point in the month of May, as the book I have chosen is A List of Cages by Robin Rowe, which once again is another contemporary story. Like, who am I? Where's the fantasy in this video? So I don't actually know a great deal about this one. I believe that it is quite a hard-hitting contemporary, and the main character has ADHD. I believe that he becomes the assistant to the school psychologist, and the psychologist asks him to help out and track down a young boy who is struggling, and the boy turns out to be the main character's foster brother that he hasn't seen in years. That is all I really know about this, but I have heard that it's really well done and has some really well executed representation in here. I picked it up, I want to say 3 or 4 years ago now, from a charity shop. I think I picked this up the very first time I went into Scarborough secondhand book shopping, which has to be at least, I want to say, 2018. But yeah, it's about time I read this one, and as it's a contemporary, even though I expect this to be really good, I probably won't keep it after I've read it. So that is it for my Bookopoly rolls, and I have to say, looking at this stack already, it's not looking great for me this month. But before we get into how many pages I have to read for the month, I do have one book I need to add, which is my Inner Circle Patreon pick. So if you are a member of the Inner Circle tier of my Patreon, you can recommend me a book that gets put into this jar, and every month I will pick one and I have to read it. So I'm a little bit nervous because we still got some chunkers in here, and I do already have 8 books on my TBR, but I think I've just seen, yeah, Truth Witches in here, which was last month's pick, so I just get rid of that and let's see what we have for May. Let's go for this one. The Warded Man by Peter V. Brett, and this one is Jennifer's pick. So this is one that I always forget that I own because in the UK the Warded Man is actually called The Painted Man. This is a special edition like re-release that I got from the publisher in 2019, and I really don't know that much about it. I do consider Peter V. Brett and The Demon Cycle especially as one of those really well-known like classic, or I want to say modern classic fantasy series where everybody's kind of heard about them and a lot of people who read exclusively fantasy has read it, but I don't know very much about it. The back of this says there's a wild world out there for those willing to brave the dark, and I flicked through this because it does have some illustrations which are a little bit ominous. So I'm just going to actually head on over to Goodreads to get you guys an actual synopsis on this book. So essentially in the Goodreads synopsis we have this horde of demons that are called the Callings, and they possess supernatural powers and burn with a consuming hatred of humanity. And for hundreds of years these demons have tormented the night. However, it didn't always used to be like this. There used to be a group of men and women who used to fight back against the Callings. However, that is no longer the case, and night by night the demons grow stronger. So this is one that I've definitely wanted to pick up for a long time. Not necessarily an ideal time to pick it up right now when I'm currently working my way through the Cosmere and also the Realm of the Earthlings, but the Inner Circle Patreon jar has spoken and I will be reading The Painted Man in the month of May. So that is everything I'm going to be reading this month. Here is my stack, and actually this does look a little bit scary, I can't lie, especially because I don't own Get a Life Chloe Brown, so we have that to add to this stack as well. Fool's Errand looks scary, but in terms of Robin Hood books it's not that long. This edition is 530 pages, which is incredibly small for a Hood book, and then I'm not sure about the writing style in this one, so I don't know how dense it's going to be and how long it's going to take me to read, but yeah, we'll see how I go. In terms of pages, it is actually 2,900-ish pages without The Painted Man, and then when you add that on it only brings it to 3,300, which is around the same length I think as last month's TBR, which I've actually managed to read the majority of. And aside from in the month of April when I slumped quite a bit, I haven't really been reading less than 4,000 pages a month this year. So theoretically we should be able to do this, but as I mentioned I do have a week off where I don't plan on reading a whole ton, so we'll see how it goes. But yeah, this is the TBR, and so that brings us to the end of this video. Please let me know down in the comments whether you think I'm actually going to be able to make it to the end of my TBR this month, and also if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them. But aside from that guys, please don't forget to like this video if you liked it, and subscribe if you wanna. If you head into the description box you'll find a link to my Goodreads, Instagram, Twitter if you'd like to follow me on any of those, as well as a link to my Bookish Candle website, the Instagram for that, and a 10% off discount code. But that's it from me today guys, bye!
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you'll go where nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.